I got some blocks back here. I haven't had a chance to define them yet. They're different colors. They mean some different things. I'll just give it some casual language and some reference to Bloom's taxonomy here. And we're going to go over it more later. But just here's an example. We often think of critical thinking as happening, if you will, way up here. You know, this and it's something we think of some, you know, I don't know, the doctor or lawyer or teacher or somebody, you know, that's already thinking at some high level. I think we start critical thinking very early. Very early. Earlier than this example, but check this example out. Little fella's looking out at animals, and he sees a bunch of animals. It's like information. This is like information coming to him. Sees a bunch of animals, and he's kind of paying attention to what's going on, and he happens to hear someone call one of them. He doesn't realize it's one of them. Language is kind of confusing here, but he says, one of them says a dog. They say it's a dog. He thinks to himself and goes, guess what? I think everything is a dog. But their world right now, compared to this pyramid that's going to come up in a minute, they've got the world figured out. Everything with 4 legs is a dog. I think it's cool because now they've kind of understood this, and they're just going along. By the way, in their mind, they think this is the whole pyramid. When I was little, I thought my grandmother's yard was huge. She lived far away from me. I went and visited many years later. Wow, it was a little yard. It was the same yard. Walked around, same yard. It seemed like their whole world was this. But they run into a dilemma, if you will, application, problem solving. The dilemma is that somebody out there mentioned that one of those things was a horse. Now, you know, can you imagine this? Somebody's been saying horse, cat, all these things, right? But you know how you are when you're first learning anything? You get saturated. You know what I mean? You only pick up a certain bit of it. I mean, even if you go watch a movie that you love, you catch certain amounts of it. If it's a great movie, you go back again and see more, and you can pick up on more, right? You can only pick up on so much. And this process has begun. This was the first pyramid. This is the essence of the second pyramid. There's a dilemma. It's a dilemma. We're not talking, and what's going on here? My world is crushed. You know, everything was dogs. It was great. And now something's a horse. And they begin to think on this. They want to solve this. It comes over here because it's like a, you know, it's off balance. You know, it's not right here. He didn't hear that everything's a dog again, everything's a dog again, everything's a dog again, right? He finally hears somebody say something's a horse. It's like a little different. He says, okay, the only way I can handle this right now is I think everything in the world is dogs or horses. Let's see. Everything that's little is dogs, and everything that's big is horses, right? So he's looking out there and he sees all the cows and everything, but he calls them all horses. You know, guess what? He's got the next pyramid. We know from here, he's down here, he thinks he's got it solved, got the world in his grips. That's all right, that's fine. He comes into another dilemma, another problem-solving situation, an application of what he knows so far and what might be coming in kind of new, okay, new information, if you will. Comes in, he hears somebody, this is the problem, say, that's a cow. He looks back over at all the animals and goes, wait, now life is getting difficult. What begins to happen here is a miracle. He begins this level of analysis. That's what Bloom calls it. It's a good name. It's an idea of, I begin to say, wait. Before I jump to a conclusion, which is called understanding, about this new information and this new problem, I begin to kind of say, hey, what's going on? Because I've got some stuff to look at now. I kind of review my history. There were these animals, and someone called it this, and someone called it that, and you know, I've been learning new stuff. And you come to some conclusion, and you say, well, okay, as far as I know, everything's now dogs, horses, cows. This begins to pick up another problem. You can just imagine now. It takes off faster than I can demonstrate. Things get kind of reorganized. This stuff would move more than I can move it. The information be reorganizing. The sense of understanding would become brighter. If these colors were like kind of dim at first, they would kind of be getting darker and darker. Could you see that? As their information gets more true, or could I say more clear, more accurate, more defensible? They're actually thinking about their thinking while they're thinking. It gets organized, and they get used to this idea of analyzing. At a very early age, they analyze the information they're receiving, and their understanding of it. They're not at this first stage. Do you remember when they were kind of arrogant? I don't mean to, in a negative sense, that they knew everything. And then they said, oh, well, I didn't, but now I know everything? Well, okay, maybe I didn't, but certainly now I know everything. Then something happens that people think is reserved for this higher level thinking. It is higher level thinking. It's reserved for older people or down the road. This person becomes authentically creative, what Dr. Bloom calls synthesis, the ability to put things together in new contexts because you've broke them down. Analysis means break it all down and reorganize it, prioritize it. Synthesize means I can put things together in new ways. For instance, gotten too complex, we've learned a lot of animals, runs into a new animal, a skunk comes walking by. Based on everything he knows, he might, the best he can say in a kind of an authentically creative way, you know, I think that's just a cat with a white stripe. And you know how complicated this can get? Did you see when that whole pyramid went down to one block? You could learn all of this about a few sets of animals, and you think you're here, and all of this gets put into one block and gets moved down into here, and you start studying a new subject about mammals and reptiles or just cows alone and the 20 different ones there are. And you begin the whole process again. So when you get to here, you actually become less arrogant. It's called intellectual humility. When you get to here, you start saying things like, you know what, I bet there's a lot more to know. The more I know, I don't know. You know the only thing that can happen to mess this up? Dr. Bloom talks about it. He says, if the child doesn't develop understanding on his own, and you tell him what it means, it's a blue block. Let me explain that. If you tell them what it means, it's like knowledge. It's not like understanding. And that is a level of his taxonomy, that you tell them what it means. Sometimes you need to tell a person what it means. You could tell the person an answer to a riddle, and they can derive some benefit from that, rather than making them solve it on their own. If you tell them the answer to a riddle, that could be all right. It is a level in the taxonomy. It actually goes flat, though. You can actually tell a person how to analyze something. You know, if somebody told you in algebra class, being an algebra teacher, about the FOIL method, that was an analysis. That was a way of organizing a problem to solve it. But if you don't know what it means and you didn't derive it on your own, it would be a problem I have with a textbook that they teach you the FOIL method. Instead, if you analyzed it and came up with it on your own, it would be orange. But because they told you and you just memorized it, it doesn't have much meaning. It doesn't have much power for you. You're unable to expand upon it and use it in other things because it's this. If you did this to a child, he would get to an age and he would quit asking questions. This curiosity cycle would quit. He wouldn't be analyzing. He doesn't care to, because what's happened to him? If he wants to understand something, he asks you and you tell him the answer. If he wants to solve a problem, instead of figuring it out and starting to analyze, you get him out of the problem. You tell him the answer. You tell him the procedure. You make him memorize an algorithm instead. Do it step by step instead of solving. So they have all blue blocks, if you will. I'm getting ahead of myself. And wonder, why won't they come up here? Because we haven't followed this PyraDynamic development, this process of growth, of natural growth. The cognitive domain. Do you remember the lowest level is called knowledge? We're using blue for that. Comprehension, when you understand something. Application, when you can solve problems. Analysis, when you can organize, prioritize, classify. Synthesis, when you can intelligently, defensively, create new things with this knowledge and understanding. Evaluation, the purple block, always checks on the criterion of everything you've done. Were they accurate information, or did I base all my thinking on stuff that's not even true? Were my experiences enough to find all the right information and to really understand? Have I categorized it and analyzed it, prioritized it the best that I can? Have I been truly authentically creative, or did I jump too soon and do something that was just creative, not just authentically creative? Constantly evaluating. By the way, he goes out and checks out other pyramids too. What does this have to do with science? Man, what does this have to do with my earlier years? What does this have to do with that? But you know, the cognitive domain does not work on its own. There is the affective domain. It seems not many people are real familiar with this one. At the lowest level is receiving, and we hang out there a lot. You're forced in a little bit of a mode like that today, just to receive information. Typically, then you need to move to a level of responding. That's active listening. Like, is this what you said? This is what I hear you saying. Valuing. That means, are you willing to solve the problem? Now on the riddle, it kind of means, I'll give it 3 seconds, but that's as much as I value it. At that point, I want you to tell me the answer, or I'm going to quit pursuing it. You understand? So what he means in the affective domain is how you feel about committing to it. The affective domain has to do with how much of myself am I going to commit to this process, to you. At the lowest level, I'm just going to, I'll listen. I'll respond to a certain degree. Okay, I'll solve your problem. I'll think another 5 seconds. So you have a task, not just to go up the cognitive. The next level is called organization. That's a strange term for the affective domain. But what it means is, are you willing emotionally to set aside enough time to do the hard work, not just of problem solving, but organizing all your problem solving? And the highest level is characterization. That means you have been affected internally. It has moved from external, you're telling me I'm receiving, I'm responding a little bit, it's like it's getting closer to me. I value it, I'll spend some time with it. Now, I'm going to spend a lot of time with this. I'm going to start thinking. You kind of got in me with that orange block, you know, and I'm just thinking about it now. You know what? This has affected me. But even more than that is the connection between the two. They go together. You cannot climb to higher order thinking while you're only receiving. If all you're doing is receiving understanding, like you told me the answer to every riddle and explained it to me, these would all be blue. Does that make sense to you? Because I'm just receiving the knowledge of the understanding. If you tell me how to work every problem, this happens in math a lot, the kid just memorizes this way to get through that problem. You see, I mean, he doesn't understand it. You find out he doesn't understand it because he's never analyzing. He's never seen the patterns down the road. He doesn't have to, because I haven't set up a circumstance for it. Everything's blue on his pyramid. You know, many of the math students, everything is blue. They didn't realize this. By the way, after I share this with my kids in class, unbelievable, because they know what happens if I'm putting a problem out. You know, I have a little picture on my board that if they ask me for the answer, they're putting themselves back at the bottom of the pyramid. They're saying, in essence, well, reduce me to knowledge. I just want a blue cube here. I want to know how to do it, but not why. No, he wants you to think. Mr. Weaver's trying to get you to think. Think about it. Figure it out. If all you do is receive, your whole pyramid can be blue. Dr. Bloom warned us about this. People don't know about, there are 9 subcategories under knowledge. 9 of them. And they're all about this. Someone, you just know you are told how to solve the problem. You memorize the algorithm, but you don't know why. You are given a chart in an analysis, a webbing, but you don't know why. Certainly you have to receive knowledge. But if you're going to get to this level, the student has to become responsive. It is a dance between give and take. The active listening, the scaffolding is so dynamic. If they're still receiving, they must be responsive. This is active listening. Is this what you mean? And you don't necessarily say yes, you give them a problem. And do they value it enough? That's when you find out. If you say, instead of saying, yes, that's right, you say, well, what about this? And they go, I don't care about that. Is this right? You know, there's a resistance there. No, I just want to receive. I was willing to respond a little bit, but don't take me here. I'm not going to move up the affective domain a little bit more and become to value this like you do, you know, or whatever. But if you get the combination, they have to. These go together. You have to be at this level to be willing to sit down and organize. When you get to this level and start making charts and outlines and reorganizing your work to try to make it make sense to you, this could be a microcosm of it. I've spent hours messing with this, so it might mean only something to me because I spent time trying to organize it. there's a danger of me like telling you in a sense, but what is it to you at first when you first learn it? It's kind of blue, right? Does that make any sense with the colors? It's kind of blue if only you've been told it. Even though it might be green, by the way. If you understand it, like if you understood the riddle, someone told you a riddle, they told you, and you go, oh, and I get the connection, that's green. It's not yellow, right? You didn't solve it. It is green because you understood it. But some people, they tell you the answer, you go, I still don't get it. But I know the answer, that's blue. And finally, I think I've already told you, until you get characterized. So it looks kind of like this in a two-dimensional model. Watch this just for a second. This is why we call it PyraDynamics. There's some receiving of knowledge, yes, but the teacher has to know that I can't keep pushing knowledge. It is time for a response. That response is driven by an application. That application will only happen if there is valuing. You see, the pyramid shape is a balance between going across and going up. It is an interaction between cognitive and affective. And it's the teacher's skill at scaffolding and questioning and teaching the student to self-talk and active listening that enables this growth. When it's blinking, by the way, that's analysis. It's rethinking over all of its situations. But it's a give and a take. If you ever expect to get to the level of characterization, being characterized by the information, the understanding, the experiences that you've encountered. Let's start with a working definition of critical thinking. If you went out on the internet and tried to study this, you will find out there are 100 different ones. A lot of people are grappling with this. This is one that I believe is the best starting point because it will lend itself to finding any other definition that you find better. This is a definition that will lead to all other definitions, if you will. Check this thing out. Critical thinking is, and I think it might be on your notes there, the art of thinking about your thinking. The art of thinking about your thinking while you are thinking, catch that recursive sense, in order to make your thinking better. What do I mean by better? More clear, more accurate, more defensible. I need to share a quick story with you that exemplifies a little bit of this mentality. Listen to this father and the insight he had with his child. I have always believed in the validity of the guided discovery method. Indeed, I tried never to merely give my children the answer to a homework problem. Rather, I tried to point them the way towards the answer and let them discover it for themselves. Now, this backfired once. My daughter was studying pioneer life and she came to me with a question. Daddy, she asked, how did the pioneers start a fire? This was my chance. And true to my principles, I would not give her a direct answer. I'll give you a hint, I said. It has to do with 2 sticks. Over the next few days, my daughter began to amass a sizable collection of sticks of all shapes and sizes, and I smiled inside of myself as she proceeded to experiment and go through this discovery process. And finally, she came to me with the paper she had written for school. When the pioneers wanted to start a fire, she wrote, they went and got 2 sticks, and they made darn sure that one of them was a match. A couple important definitions that I think we've covered. Active listening. This is when you're listening and responding to the substance and meaning of another person's communication for the purpose of clarifying, validating, and understanding. You've heard of this, active listening. An example, waiter comes to your table, what we all have, and I just leave. I don't say anything back. Pretty high probability that when I come back with the food, you say, no, I had a Coke. Oh, no, I had steak, I didn't have fish. There was no sense of communication there. Second, different waiter comes, listens to you, says, just repeats. This is the lowest level of active listening. At least repeat back what they said. So you want a Coke and French fries and ranch. So you get a chance to go, oh no, that wasn't what I said, or oh, that is what I said, but I want this instead. Right? It's a higher level of active listening, validating what you hear, clarifying what was communicated. Now I go and I have a higher chance of bringing you back what you really needed because I was active listening. Highest level. Have you met this kind of waiter? Come to your table, listen, and I reflect back in a deeper sense. I just don't repeat back what you said. I noticed that you were really looking for something new. You were kind of in the mood for something new. And I suggest to you that here's a new item that we did. That's active listening. Self-talk, active listening to yourself for the purpose of maintaining focus and motivation towards a goal. Isn't that what self-talk is? Keep you motivated yourself. I mean, I had self-talk this morning. Been sleeping in. 5:30. And I'm talking to myself, is it really 5:30? Is it really Monday? No, it's Saturday. No, it's really, Scaffolding is when you help another person develop these skills. You're coming. The student doesn't know to self-talk them through the problem. So you say, well, what was the information that we looked at? What did you say it understood? Remember when we wrote in our journals? Remember the other problem you worked? What happened there? Do you remember? Oh, wait, was this important information? Did you need more information? Remember that information you didn't think was important that's still sitting out there? Was that important? Maybe not. Okay. What I'm saying? Scaffolding goes up and down. It asks appropriate questions for the student to try to. It's kind of like trying to prime the pump, trying to get this thing going to where they'll start doing this PyraDynamic process.